All right, so fundamental nomography and Smith charts and stuff. Smith charts are very important in in antenna transmissions, telecommunications stuff. Uh, you're going to have to know it for physics and for engineering. You might as well know it. Though this tends to bother the crap out of a lot of people and stuff. They have trouble with it, so I'm going to try to smooth out the material here, which is I think really is synonymous with the process of learning it. Correct me if that's kind of like bringing things down too much. But so I have these pictures here because I want to talk to you about fundamental nomography and stuff. Nomographs have their own way of showing multiple axes to relate different properties, different dimensions and stuff. The dimensions in general mathematical theory have a wider range of meanings and stuff than in the sciences, which heavily use applied mathematics and stuff. But that's going on a tangent too much. So in a nomographical chart, in this basic chart and stuff, you draw a straight line to relate these three dimensions. So naturally, this line here with a slope of like, let's say, roughly -1, it you have a flow velocity of 15, which means you have a hose bore of about -16, which means you have a flow rate of about 100 and stuff. You keep that line straight and you can make the slope 0 or positive and stuff, and you follow that line to get those values. And there's many ways these charts can be derived. They can be derived by manual measurement and stuff, but that's kind of sweat hogging it. That's kind of what's called a schlepp in Yiddish and stuff. Schlepp is a good word for when you're forcing the issue, when you could just, you know, look at the more abstract properties of things and solve things or frame the problem in a more precise or different way, um, and see what result, and you see if there's a better result or not. Um, Now going to the Smith chart, which is a type of nomograph, and you'll see why. Um, you okay, this is something closer to what I wanted and stuff. No, where's Okay, yeah, I think I'm just going to go with this. There's many versions of the Smith chart. Some are better than others. This one's pretty fully labeled. The lettering is very blurry here, but here there's many axes. On the Smith chart, you have this central line here, which is the resistance component or the conductance component. They have a one-to-one correspondence, roughly speaking. Okay, because like in the quantum scale, I'm pretty sure there's some disagreements and stuff. Um, Theoretically, you want everything here to be at 0, right at the center of the chart and stuff. That means that everything is balanced and stuff, because with a transmission of anything, you and you're trying to design something that's meant to work and stuff, you want everything to remain stable and stuff. And you don't want to exceed the capacity of the material. Um, and under and you know undercurrenting and stuff, or underloading the transmission and stuff. Remember, transmission, now you got to know, transmission and energy means no, energy transmission and engineering means something very different. It's things that transmit force, electricity, different variations of force carrying massive energy or energy and stuff, but it's all variations of energy. Okay. um and so with this chart and stuff, basically what you do is you find a point which is hopefully on an intersection of a line. If not, you're going to have a little bit more of a rough time. And you kind of follow it to a labeled axis and stuff. And you want to make sure things like you understand things in a labeled way and stuff. Um, Here we have the inductive reactance component or capacitive susceptance, um, and wavelengths towards generator. This chart relates all of these values and stuff. So if we're here and stuff, we just, I'm gonna use my mouse to kind of follow that line and stuff and see which numbers we're hitting on which axis. And then we can kind of like label in our heads the statistical values and begin calculations that relate these things. Um, trans, yeah, this also relates transmission coefficient. This is poorly labeled here, these lines here. I'll have to make another video labeling everything, but if this explanation didn't make the rubber hit the road and stuff and give you some traction in this, then, well, I don't know. So here we use angle of reflection coefficient here, and on the next line, the angle of transmission coefficient and stuff. Yeah,